All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started, and we are recording for anybody who comes on late today. But first, we're just going to take a second and introduce ourselves, and then we're going to kind of go through how question and answers and chatting is going to go. So first of all, I just want to welcome you all. This is our second webinar in an animal shelter software education series. And today's webinar, webinar 2, has to do with non-custodial software record keeping. And non-custodial, to define that, means if you are keeping records on horses who are not in your care. And this isn't just for horses, this is owners requesting aid for help. These are direct placement programs if you're assisting horses transitioning from, say, an owner or trainer at a racetrack to a new home without taking custody. This might be a safety net program such as financial assistance, feed assistance, medical assistance, and it could just be requests for owner surrenders or requests to help animal control or law enforcement confiscations and seizures. But the main idea is that these are records for horses you are not taking custody of. With the Equine Welfare Data Collective, this all started because as we began collecting our data, we realized one of the #1 inhibitors to our data is record keeping. And we recognized that organizations may be struggling with their record keeping. And based on our data, up to 40% of organizations are relying on paper record keeping, and up to 70% total are relying on either paper record keeping only or a combination of paper record keeping and spreadsheet software in general. So that might be Microsoft Excel, that might be Google Sheets, kind of this big range of things happening. But our overall goal is we want to help you have easier record keeping, more organized record keeping, because not only does that help us with our data collection initiative, but it helps you do things like connect with your community better, recognize what programs within your own organization are being really successful, what programs you might want to grow more. It'll help you communicate with your donors. It might help you communicate with local horse councils or law enforcement about areas of need you recognize. So we feel that good data and good record keeping isn't one just helpful to us in the horse industry, but it's also really helpful to you and really critical to your organization elevating itself and continuing to do the great work that you do. So once we recognized this was an issue, we reached out to a group called W4Site, who is doing our presentation today, and asked them to help identify all the different softwares out there available to equine welfare organizations and review them, and then help us understand the steps to onboarding your organization to them. Or if your organization is already using a software, how you might think about swapping over to something new or identifying what you want to be doing better. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Karen and Debbie, who are with W4Site and doing our presentation today.
Thank you. Debbie, I don't know if you wanted to say anything or if you want me to do the intro. No, okay. Okay. So my name is Karen Diener. I work with W4Site. Emily is going to be running slides for me today. So I'm going to, is the rest of your screen? I can't quite tell. There we go. Okay. Perfect, thank you. So this is our very basic intro slide. We can go to the next one. There we go. Just to introduce W4Site and what we do. We are, is it moving along?
Yes, but I forgot to say, very importantly, the chat is not open, but the question and answer tab is open. So if you've never attended a webinar before, if you have questions, please type them directly into the question and answer, and then Debbie or Ashley or myself will answer them live, and the question and answer tab just keeps a nice orderly line of all the questions so you can kind of follow up with them.
Okay, great. So W4Site, we're an independent consulting firm. We do specialize in working with nonprofit organizations and pretty specifically on their software. So it's a huge range of types of software and types of organizations that we work with, but they are all nonprofits. So we understand what that's like to have small staff and small budget and wanting something that's easy and doesn't detract from your mission and what you really want to be doing. We are founded in Chicago. We are founded in 2009. We're based in Chicago, and we do work all over the place. Luckily, the technology now is very remote friendly, so that's been helpful to us during COVID, of course. We also, I want to point out, do not take money from vendors to represent or recommend their software. So everyone, which I only have 2 software recommendations that we're highlighting today, but they don't know, they're not giving us any money to put them in the slideshow. We can approach this with very objectively. We like to find the right fit for the right organization. So let's move on to the next one really quickly. Debbie is working on the Q&A today. She is a founding partner of W4Site, many years of experience in software selection and implementation. She is a barn mom, has been for 8 years. We were talking about our girls and their horses just prior to the meeting. I've been working with W4Site since January 2019, but I do have over 20 years of experience working in the nonprofit world, both as frontline fundraising and as a data administrator. So I do know what it's like to be on the ground, I guess. I am fortunate to drive a team of Percheron draft horses as a volunteer at a living history facility nearby, which is a lot of fun, and people realize just how big horses are when they get close. I'm also a barn mom. My 17-year-old daughter has a paint horse that she's out at the barn riding as we speak. She had Veterans Day off school. I'm not really sure why, but it's okay. So we'll go to the next slide here. Emily already did a great job of introducing the concept of non-custodial organizations. When we really sat and thought about this, you don't ever take custody of an equine, so you don't necessarily need to take medical history and take down their breed and their age and all the unique pieces of information about that horse, kind of biographical data about them. You also do not specifically provide treatments for them or have other interactions with them where, a veterinarian comes in or a trainer comes in and does an assessment, or the farrier visits, or all sorts of different activities. And you don't really work with adopters necessarily. Now, this is for organizations that are purely non-custodial. My understanding is that some of you do take custody and some of you do still offer referrals as well. So this is really geared initially this concept here is non-custodial organizations. But what you do need to keep track of is the person making a requester profile. You need to know their name, their address, their contact information. And you need to know some information about the request itself, like what date did it come in, what was the specific request that they had, what's the reason for it, what referral did you make, and was the request fulfilled? Those points are pretty closely tied to the Equine Welfare Data Collective Survey, because I know that it asked, how many requests did you receive and how many were you able to fulfill? So we kept that in mind when we were reviewing software. How able would it be? How easy would it be for you to be able to record that information and report it back out? And the last thing to pay attention to, or that you'll need to keep track of, is the service provider profile. So a way to group your farriers together, your veterinarians together, people who provide very specific services. Like I said, I drive a team of draft horses. It is not always easy to find farriers in the Chicago area who are familiar with draft horses. And working with them, they are barefoot. I know there can be differences between barefoot and horses with shoes. So just a way for you to keep track of the nuances of the people that you work with and would make referrals to. So we can go to the next slide. So what did we do? And I don't know if anybody was on the webinar on Monday. This is very similar. The EWDC did some focus groups with membership, and that was really helpful for us because we really heard directly from all of you about what things you need to keep track of, what your software requirements and record keeping requirements would be. There was an intern who did some research and came up with an awful lot of software options. Most of them really did seem to be related to animal care, so not many really made it into this particular webinar in terms of just a service provider tracking, but that was still really helpful, of course. And then Equine Welfare Data Collective and the United Horse Council staff gave us some additional input on software. We then reviewed software sites. There are websites specifically devoted to reviewing software. They categorize them in different ways, allow you to filter. So we did some of that research, and we did just do some Googling, quite honestly, like what kind of software is out there? What did we hear about? What could we find out about them very, very quickly? And did they end up coming into the fold for any further research? We did some demos with vendors or used trial and test databases, because so many software systems are now cloud-based. You don't buy installed software and put it on your computer. And that has allowed a lot of these software vendors to make free databases available. They're either empty when you get them, or they're filled with test data and you can play around with it. Sometimes the empty databases only allow you to add 10 or 20 or 30 records, but it gives you a real feel for how it actually could be used, could be configured, how you might run reports, so on. So that's basically what we started with. And we can move to the next slide. The thing to really keep in mind, and these next two slides are ones that we use in almost every software selection process that we talk about, it's always a balancing act. So what it really came down to for this particular webinar is there is software that does customer support, and there's software that helps with animal shelter management. So if you are only doing direct service referrals, then the customer support side might be the way you would want to lean. If you're a shelter situation custodial organization that also handles a decent number of referrals, then you might be on the other side of that teeter-totter. So I'm just checking my notes here to make sure. The point being, it's really hard. There's no perfect solution. And you have to evaluate your pros and cons and find the right balance for your organization based on a variety of factors. These are just some of the requirements. And if we go to the next slide, the other things to take into account are the cost of the software and what your budget is, the time and effort that you have or your staff has or your volunteers have to devote to possibly configuring software, managing it, and then what the functionality is of the software. Does it really meet all the needs that you have? So hopefully, when you throw all those things together into one funnel, what will come out is a decision about the right software for you. So our next slide. If you do direct service only, we have a favorite product, which is Freshdesk. And I don't know if anyone's used it before, but this basically is the kind of software where when you are on a website and you log a support ticket, request for help, maybe look for, open up the chat window and ask for help, it could be Freshdesk. It could be a lot of others, but this is the one that I really had a good chance to look at and really felt like it could meet the needs of a lot of people. So it is designed for customer support. So keep that in mind as we move through the next steps. If you provide service referrals in addition to taking custody of equine, Shelter Manager might be a good option for you. It is designed pretty primarily for animal shelter management. So intake of animals, they'll stay with you for a while, you will treat them, you will then have an outcome, hopefully they're adopted. But in the meantime, you have, like I said, the treatment, you have adopters. So but it still can be used to handle these referral situations as well. So we can go to the next one. Let's just get it out of the way right now. What's the annual subscription for each of these? Freshdesk charges per agent is what they call it, or user. The normal fee is $15 per agent per month, which is $180 per year. So if you had multiple staff people or multiple volunteers that were fielding those service requests, you might want each person to have their own account. You might also be fine with just one. It's every single request that's logged will be tied to the same user then. So you wouldn't be able to tell, well, who added this versus somebody else adding another request. The company was willing to offer a discounted price of $13.50 per agent per month for up to 9 agents, and then it goes down a little bit more if you have more than 9. But if you had 1 agent and could get the $13.50 per agent per month, that 162 number would be your annual cost. So if you had 2 agents, then your cost would double. It would be $324. So they were very easy to work with. You never know if you could get them discounted a little bit more, but it's just something to keep in mind. Always ask. Shelter Manager, the fee for the product is $340. It's a flat fee regardless of the number of users, volume of animals. I only left that in there because a lot of software does charge based on that volume. There's a lot of different combinations of things that come into play when software is being priced out. I did want to let you know that it is headquartered in England, and PayPal is currently the only option for overseas clients. So just to be aware of that. I didn't have any issues with the demo. I don't know if support might be an issue, but we'll come down to that later. So I just wanted to put the fees out there right now. So our next slide, we wanted to talk about the look and feel of each of the software products here. So the next few slides are trying an attempt to show you the basics, just so you get a feel for what it looks like. Does it look complicated and cumbersome and confusing, or is it nice and streamlined? So it can be difficult to see on smaller screens. So I want to say right now, we are sending out the PowerPoint slides in PDF after this. So you will be able to zoom in a little bit and see any screens. Both of the softwares that we're talking about today have either a free demo or a 3-week demo, so you can really get in there and check them out yourself. But we are going to show a main screen and some of the menu and navigation, what a person profile looks like, what service tracking might look like, and then what a service provider profile might look like. So these would help you manage all of those requests. So first up is Freshdesk. We can go straight to the next screen. So again, this is really, really hard to see, but it gives you an idea of what the interface looks like. This is right after you log in. This is the first screen you'll see, and it's a dashboard. It's pretty standard. I don't think you can modify it at all, but if you can kind of see along the top, there are some boxes, and there's a number 1 in there you might be able to see. That's a clickable number. So I think that, yeah, unresolved is the first box, open is the second, on hold is the third. If you clicked on the unresolved number, it would give you a list of all the unresolved tickets. So it is actionable. It's kind of nice to see that. And there are other ways to get to that data, but it surfaces all of this information, thinking that you might need it right away when you log in. The middle band shows that sort of activity trend of what your volume is. The bottom 2 boxes also show some unresolved tickets by group. We'll get into that, some to-do items. But you can also navigate along the left of the screen. There's kind of a dark charcoal or very, very dark blue bar along the left side. So those are some navigation icons too. And like I said, this is just to give you an idea of what it might look like. So our next screen, this is really the top of that main screen that I just showed you, the top of that dashboard. Just to point out, zoom in a little bit, see what it looks like. Mostly what you do to interact with the system are you add tickets, you send emails, and you add contacts or work with contacts, or you add or work with companies. Those are really the 4 main kinds of records or things that you do in this software. So if you were starting right off the bat with a new ticket or a new contact or anything, you could just click on that new button and this menu would pop right up. You could also, again, access this from that bar on the left. So our next screen shows you a new ticket screen. And this is where I got kind of excited. And this is what set Freshdesk apart from other customer support type software, was that I could customize a lot of fields. I added fields for date of request at the very top. I added specific options in the type field, and those correspond to the entries in the survey. So you could make those match exactly and then get totals on what kinds of tickets you had based on what kind of referral requests you had. The status table I did also update. I need to put my glasses on really quick here. Yes, status is on this field. I was able to add different options to that as well. And I added date request fulfilled as another option. Again, there's a difference between getting a request and being able to fulfill the request. And dates are certainly important as you're running your data for the survey, because you need to know, what did you do from January to June? And then what did you do from July to December? So this is all pretty clean and neat. I don't think there's much else to say on that. And maybe, anyone should feel free to pause if there's a question, a Q&A that's relevant. So jump right in if you need to. So we'll go to the next screen here. This is just a little bit further down on the new ticket screen. There's a priority level you can assign. The groups is, I toyed a lot with this. Because this is a customer support system, the idea is to flag a team for troubleshooting. So this might be a problem that someone's having with software and it needs to go to the development team. And separately, you have flagged all of your developers, like your software writers, software programmers. You maybe have flagged all of them already as developers. So you can just tag the developer group. Anybody who's in that group would then be notified of this ticket. I'm not sure how it relates necessarily in your types of organizations, unless you're very big. You could potentially assign farriers or veterinarians or things like that to it. I'm just not sure how it would work since I wasn't able to fully test all the different capabilities in this. But it's something to keep in mind that you may be able to make use of at some point. So the system auto-populated my name as the agent. You can assign somebody else to the ticket. So this would be an example of where you had multiple people that were in your organization that had different tickets and you wanted to give this to somebody else to handle. So there is an option to fill out a description of the request. The more I played with this, the better I liked it. And this is just where you write a little bit of a narrative, and I have some examples in here, and I can show you how the ripple effect of using these and using them carefully. But that's a description of the actual request. At the very bottom of the page, there are some tags which can help you in searching and filtering. And these are things that you add completely on your own. So you might tag it as farrier request, veterinary request, if you didn't use the group option. So we can go to the next screen. So after I added a ticket, I got an email with all the ticket information replicated on there, which was kind of nice. If I click on tickets on that left bar, it's the second little button down, I can see a list of all the tickets that are currently sorted by the date created. I can sort by other fields too, but it shows you a list of them. And on the right, oh, is it? I have to zoom in. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, over on the right top, you can see that maybe you can see there's a card view. So this is the card view. You can also switch to a table view. And what's nice is the table view lets you select a few more columns that might be helpful on this main display screen. And further on the right, that more vertical bar, you can filter the cards in a lot of different ways, which can be helpful for auditing. Maybe you review tickets to say like, gosh, I feel like I didn't mark all my tickets complete this week. I want to audit and make sure that I did and that I followed up with everybody. So you can use different filters to show and hide tickets that might meet different criteria. So the next screen here is one of the tickets that I had added. So if I click on it, it opens up more detail so that I can edit or act on it. And what I love here is I clicked a forward button, which I don't see on the image, but this email option pops up that I customized completely. You can customize your own emails, and I added merged fields from the ticket request into it. And then I sent this directly to a service provider that I had already set up in my system as a contact. So this I can populate, I can merge all the fields in from my request. Here's the person making the request, here's their contact information, this is what they need. I could send that directly to somebody outside. Not really, I mean, they have to be a contact in the system. They do not need to be an agent that you're paying for. So this is a really nice feature. If you have one farrier that you work with, if you have one trainer that you work with, you could just fire emails right off to them directly. If you have, oh yeah, and they should not even really need an account in Freshdesk to get back in and look at anything. You could do that if you wanted them to go in and mark the ticket as complete, but if you wanted just to send them an email and consider it done, your job is over, you've completed the request, you can just mark that all yourself, the email will go to that provider, and that's all you need to worry about. So I really loved that feature. It just seemed to make it very easy. The next screen just shows the email that I actually received. So this is in my email box. Here's exactly what was displayed on that screen in Freshdesk, and here is the email that I received. So our next screen, reporting obviously is important. So there's some nice, really straightforward reporting. I zoomed in on this because I was filtered on that dark bar on the left, and you can kind of see the second from the bottom is the report and analysis filter or icon. So I clicked on that and I was able to pick a time period and pick the type of request that I was looking for. So this would be a great way of, in the first half of the data collective survey, what types of requests did I receive? And so this is just a zoom in on this. If we go to the next screen, we can see what this ultimately shows me. And again, a little hard to see, but my parameters are listed at the top. I was able to save it and rerun it later. And it does break some things down. Since I only have 1 or 2 tickets, I think 2 in here total for that time frame. So it doesn't show me a lot, but it would start to break apart and show some interesting things. And you would be able to pretty easily run some intake information, or I guess request information, by those ticket types. And as long as you filter, you could also see, well, what was fulfilled, what was not fulfilled. So this was pretty fun and easy to play with. One thing I will say, you can kind of see a light blue bar near the top. It mentions that, I think it says like reports are going away. Please take a look at analysis. They are rebuilding the reporting in general. The analysis, I played with it just the tiniest bit. It's pretty robust. I think you could probably get anything you wanted. And then it's just up to you to decide how much time you want to put into that and build fancy reports. Again, because it's geared toward customer service and how long did you spend on this and how many satisfied customers do you have, it does have a lot of stuff built in that you won't really need, but it does definitely have what you need. So I think we have one final screen to show here. If you imagine your full dashboard, over on the right, you had other ways to filter your tickets. So you could just look at your entire ticket view, and then you could say, you know what, just show me. I don't want to mess with the report. The analysis confuses me. I just want to see what tickets were resolved related to disaster relief during this time frame. And you could easily see a number of those tickets. So that's just another easy way to do it. I mean, I can't even say time consuming, because the only thing you'd have to keep changing would be the status, or not the status, the type, to change it from one type of assistant to another. So that basically does it for Fresh Desk. Our next screen, we're just going to highlight Shelter Manager. So we can move right to the next one. Again, Shelter Manager is an animal shelter management software. So just to orient you, this is the main screen that you'll see when you log in. Okay, so we're going to focus on the areas you would use if you were doing service referrals. So along the very, very top, you'll see the paw print on the left. That's the main navigation. ASM stands for Animal Shelter Manager. I've seen this listed as both Shelter Manager and Animal Shelter Manager. I just don't think they've become consistent on the language. That is kind of the main navigation. It does surface a lot of information to you, but probably for this purpose, you would just go straight to ASM, Animal Shelter Manager. So if we go to the next screen, we can see that once you click on that, you kind of get these categories of what you can do with animals. What can you do with lost and found? What do you do with people? And so on. So I've highlighted people and diary, because diary is the area that we're going to make use of for the service referrals. So I want to point out too that what you can do under diary is you can see my diary notes, and you can see all diary notes, and you can see a diary calendar. So those items will come up a little bit later. And we'll go to our next screen. So I have added a farrier named Jeremiah, and right above that blue bar, kind of in the middle of the screen, it says type. And it's a little hard to get a screenshot of this, because if you click on name and address, type collapses and name and address section expands. And if you clicked back on type, name and address section collapses and type expands. So it's a little hard to give you a full picture of what it looks like. But I wanted to point out, I added the flag of farrier. So I could put that in. I flagged farriers and veterinarians, and again, behaviorists and trainers and any other type of person that you might want to interact with or refer people to. And then I made a note that he's comfortable working with draft horses. So he is our farrier. I am going to go to the next screen. Debbie again is featured here. She is a person in the system. And I've just added basic information. I didn't add address information, but I just added her just to get started. And so the next thing I will do is I am going to click on diary to add a diary entry for her. So this is where it starts to get a little bit clunky, admittedly, a little confusing. You kind of have to flip it over in your head. So the for entry at the top. Number one, I'm logged in as demo because this is a demo database. This typically would be the user that is being assigned this task. So the list normally, when you click on that arrow, would show you all the different users in here, or it would show you any flag that was set up. So again, you could say, this is going out to all farriers, this is going out to all trainers, this is going out to all veterinarians, whatever that may be. So here it's meant to, sorry, skipping through my notes. Oh, here we go. So the date in this case, I just used as the date requested. And the time is, you don't need to have it. I think this would be really, if you needed to do a very, very specific activity at a very specific time, it's not required, so you can save it without requiring it. I did not mark it as completed. You can save it without completing it. Again, that allows us to record the date somebody made a request and the date it was able to be fulfilled, if that's important for you. I was able to add anything I want, or actually no, the animal husbandry, that's not a drop-down value, so I did need to just type that in. This would be difficult potentially to keep. You'd have to type it the same way all the time. So that is something to keep in mind. You always want to use the same language to make it a little bit easier to review and report your data later. But this is serving as my request. It's a request for general animal husbandry. Debbie's normal farrier is hurt. She needs a referral for a new one. Her horse is barefoot, FYI. So once I add this, it shows up if we go to the next screen. Actually, what I've done is gone back to that green ASM button. And if I click on that, I can go to diary entries and I can see all the different entries that are in here. I will say this is one of the, really the only way for reporting. I looked through, I did not see any existing reports that work based off diary entries. And I looked for other types of things in here. There's some contact management, there's some other tasks and things. And this was the only one that had two dates, a date to start or receive the request and a date to complete it. So if that's not important to you to keep track of two different dates, it might be worth still looking at the software and looking at some of the other areas. So I just want to point out that this is really all you get for reporting. You can add new reports to Shelter Manager. I saw that and got excited, thought, great, I'll just build a report. But it requires SQL and HTML coding. So that immediately fell out of my repertoire of ability. But you may find an excited volunteer who is interested in doing something like that. And I would definitely just reach out to Shelter Manager and see if they might be able to do a really, really quick report. They may be willing to do that. So I don't want this to be a deal breaker. I do want to let you know ahead of time what you might be getting into, but know that what you see is not necessarily the only thing you can get. We ask a lot of questions and we ask for extra little things, and very often those do come true. So our next screen shows that diary calendar, which is kind of nice. So you just click another button and it shows you everything in this nice calendar view. So that basically is all that there is about Shelter Manager. So the next slide just talks a tiny bit about the customer support options. Freshdesk has chat support right in the software. They have a really, really thorough knowledge base and FAQ section. They have a community where you could post information. Sales support at least has been very responsive. Sales typically is very responsive, but I do feel like they were very, very willing to work with me with all the questions that I had. They have this demo database, so you can log in. This one's a 21-day trial, so play with it, definitely. What's neat about Freshdesk is they have different levels. So you've got a really basic one, and I think there are 4 levels altogether that offer slightly advanced features at every level. What is neat about their trial is you can do your free trial at whatever level you think you might want to use. The reason, this is the second of 4 levels that I trialed, which is the Blossom level. And the reason I did that is because the basic level does not allow you to create your own ticket request fields or your ticket design or add as many fields or customize fields. So I felt like that was important, and it was hard to really rethink what you would need and kind of put it into this ticketing type of software. Shelter Manager has a really nice online manager or online manual, training videos, FAQs, all online. They do say specifically that requests are handled via email. Because it is based in England, I don't know how quick the response would be. Shelter Manager makes their database available, but refreshes the data every night. So what's funny is sometimes if I've been working on this in the morning, while I'm in the process of doing things, my data disappears because I have to keep in mind they're probably refreshing the data in England at the time that I'm working in the system. So if you're going to play with it and trial it, just kind of be aware of that. Both of these customer support options are part of the purchase. There's no additional fee. I don't believe I saw anything about an additional fee for better support. So it's nice that this is included. There are not tiers of support. Yeah, so I think that's all on the support question. Our next slide is what should you do next? So we're going to send you the PowerPoint slides in a PDF version, so you'll be able to zoom in and read my notes and everything if you forgot anything. The other thing that we did is we used Airtable, which is a cloud-based collaboration tool, to store a lot of the data as we did research. So the links in there I have are for possible candidates. We have an overview that highlights certain important features, and then we have details, every single detail in there that we kept track of. There's a link to that as well. We also kept data on the same type of data, overview data, and then detailed data on any candidate that we rejected. I always hate to use the term rejected because it might work for you still. It's worth looking at those. It's worth just knowing what's out there. Some of the software that we rejected, we just didn't think was the best fit for the broadest group of people. One of the things Emily mentioned early on was law enforcement engagement. There's a software that's going to be in the rejected, but maybe in the possible candidates, even though I didn't feature them here. They're still considered a possible candidate. It's called Rescue Connection. And they have a component that you can purchase that is almost explicitly designed for law enforcement engagement if you need to work closely with law enforcement. They have another one that's great for the service tracking. But the software base level is pretty expensive. It's up around $1,000 just to get started. So again, that might be a great software for bigger organizations that do custody, that are very active with volunteers, that do a lot of service requests. It just didn't sound like that was quite the audience we had for these webinars, so I didn't present it. But please take a look at all those links there. Think about, after you review our research, think about your specific needs. What is your budget? What is your staff configuration and volunteers? What software requirements do you have? Go ahead and play with those demo and database and free trials. Freshdesk is 21 days. I'm sure they would extend it. They would. Shelter Manager offers their demo database, which I reminded that it is refreshed each night. So do all those things, prepare a bunch of questions, talk to the vendors, talk to your staff and volunteers, and ask more questions. It's a lot of this, really make sure it's the right thing for you. So that's our suggestion on that one. Our final slide, I just wanted to give you an idea of who I had worked with. For Freshdesk, basically, if you sign up for that free trial, somebody's going to get in touch with you. And you can ignore their email or you can reply and explain. But Brandon is the person that I worked with. And he was really, really very helpful. He's the one, he pointed out a lot of things to me. He was the one who said, oh, we would be able to offer a slight discount for your people, the people you're presenting to, considering they're all, rescue organizations, nonprofits. So you may get him if you sign up for a trial, you may get somebody else, but they were very, very willing to work with us. Rob at Shelter Manager, I don't actually have his last name. I only asked him a couple of questions to clarify some information because Their demo database was very functional and had a lot of help available. So I only asked a couple of questions, but I did still want to provide a name in case, even though he responded from the info email, just to let you know who I worked with. So that is all I have. The last slide is just open for questions. I don't know if we've received any along the way.
You did such a good job explaining. There's no questions in the Q&A.
Okay.
For our participants that are with us, if you have a question you'd like to ask live, please there's the raise hand portion of Zoom. Just raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Otherwise, Ashley and I do have a couple questions, so hopefully we can keep this discussion going. So say that you're using both, say your organization is both custodial and offering non-custodial services, which there's lots of organizations out there doing that.
Sure.
Is there one system that you think would be, I don't want to say easiest or more straightforward to kind of either integrate or pair with maybe one of the ones we talked about yesterday?
Yeah, a lot of these softwares don't really integrate with a lot of other things. Debbie, fortunately, is doing Debbie's doing the donor management and volunteer webinar on Friday. There's a little bit more integration between software, but not with any of the animal shelter software necessarily. So these don't really integrate with a lot of other products. I think it depends on what that balance is between how much do you do in direct service or do in referrals versus how much do you do with custodial organizations. If your intake volume is really high and you just do a few referrals, then I would maybe lean toward animal shelter management software. If you do a lot of referrals that are, maybe sort of difficult to keep up with, you might want to do a fresh desk ticketing type of customer support software, and then separately have something that handles the, 3 horses that you take in per year.
Excellent. And then, so it sounds like especially with Fresh Desk, there's a lot of room maybe for creativity within setting it up. Do you feel like both of these options or any of the other options that you felt like didn't rise to the top were really flexible or maybe had room to really customize towards your needs?
That was a really big focus for reviewing all the software that we looked at, because some of the animal shelter management software is dog and cat, and that's all. You can't even change it to equine. You have to call your horse brown, not the many shades of brown that my daughter yelled at me about. He's sorrel, not chestnut. I'm sorry, he looks brown. So if specificity about the equine is really important, then you want to make sure you have a system that's configurable. Animal Shelter Manager is very configurable, and we didn't go into that as much today because we weren't focused on the custodial aspects, but I was definitely able to add breeds and horse-specific coloring and a lot of things that were, very horse-specific that would make more sense. Similarly, that's why I really liked Fresh Desk. I started off by looking at Zendesk, which I think is a little bit more common that people might be familiar with. It was so tech support driven, and you couldn't modify anything. You couldn't change anything. You had to really learn tech support language for handling customer support tickets. And I discounted that pretty quickly because I was having trouble myself trying to figure out how we could use this for this situation. There probably are other products out there very similar to Fresh Desk. So if you're not sure Fresh Desk is right, just Google competitors to Fresh Desk and see what you find. You might find more. But the configuration aspects, I think, were really big. It will feel like a lot at first, but once you have it set up and working, I think it'll work nicely for either thing that you need to work. It's just, that's a factor you need to take into account when you're purchasing any new software. You will have to set up some things. You will have to go through some trial and error on reporting and exactly how do I use this, and is this getting me the result that I want? But that happens with any software, no matter what, even if you're an animal shelter using animal shelter software. So.
And just for everybody out there and everybody watching this recording, this is a reminder that we had a previous webinar before this that's also recorded that talked about custodial software. So record keeping for taking custody of animals. And also, I think you just raised another really good point, Karen. So in terms of kind of expanding our mind of when we're searching for software solutions, it's really easy because we're animal shelter people to just Google animal shelter software and then see what pops up. Or equine shelter horse rescue software or something like that and see what pops up. But there's a lot of other things we could be looking at that could be a good solution. So like customer support solutions will help with kind of these safety net programs. That's what Fresh Desk really is.
Yeah. And I think I find it fun and interesting to do that. Take what, repurpose something. If you're not having to repurpose everything, but it allows you a lot of configuration within the structure of the software, then that might be a really great option. I was putting together I was considering one of the softwares that I demoed on or discussed on Monday, iShelter. I was ready to present that as an option as well for those who provide custodial and non-custodial services. And the reporting on the sort of activities or contacts with individuals that would basically represent your service referrals was non-existent. And I really felt like that's just not a good option then. It does a nice job of custodial, keeping track of your animals, but you couldn't report out and get data for your survey. How many phone calls did I receive for, rehoming or euthanasia services or any of that? So, sometimes you have to work backward from what do you want to get out, and then can the software support what I'm going to need to do and see? So it makes sense to start at the beginning, like what fields are there? How do I populate it? How do I use it? And then all of a sudden, when you finally are like, okay, how do I pull this back out? It can be, that's where you can have a deal breaker. So
yeah. And in terms of reporting, we get the questions of, can you just give us the perfect software who will spit out the reports for the Equine Welfare Data Collective? And yes, that is super convenient, but also like some of the categories you just brought up, Karen, knowing how many requests for owner euthanasia are happening in your community, tracking that for your own purposes is, you want to know if that's raising or lowering in your community, if maybe your programs are helping with that, be a big need for that in your community. And you want something to track that.
Yeah. And something else that, I meant to point out, and I think is really important to keep track of in the service referral area is, do you get a lot of requests from the same person or the same area? Is there something going on in a specific area that needs to be addressed? Is there there's one person having a lot of trouble, and, what's really going on with that location, that person? So I think that tracking it and keeping track of it and making sure that all of the requests from one person are logged under a record for that person can really start to show you that information. I didn't really point it out, but jurisdiction or region or location was a field in a couple of these softwares. So you would also be able to match up like, this area of the state has a lot of trouble, or if there's a disaster in some area of the state, like a natural disaster, you may have a lot of referrals coming your way for assistance. So
like a tornado, or something very location specific, like a tornado or something.
Yeah. So if that increases, then you can say, oh, well, they were in this county, they had a tornado hit. So it helps you explain the data too, if you're looking for trends over time. So
Ash, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I have two. So occasionally our members will request more of like a mobile option. Do you happen to know if either of these two software options are have any sort of app available on a phone or a mobile?
Yes. I did. I tested both of them, and they both work on mobile devices. So you just log in with the same information. Fresh Desk is a little bit more mobile friendly, but Animal Shelter Manager was more so than I expected. I'll admit that it's a little clunky.
Looking at it online, I'm like, how can they get this on a more mobile option? But that's good to know. Okay.
It looks a little, it's a lot to take in, but it actually was pretty good as a mobile view.
But say you're doing like a mobile gelding clinic, that's really good to have if you're able to take those requests on your phone and make new records for that on your phone.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's pretty common, especially for smaller software companies. They may not have the resources to develop an actual app that you download from the App Store, but making software mobile responsive, meaning you're still going to use your browser on your phone, but you can at least save the shortcut to your home screen. You don't have to navigate to it every time. That is usually a more cost-effective way for smaller vendors to be able to make their software available via mobile devices.
Yeah.
And then my other question was, which of these two options do you think, or would you consider to be more beginner friendly? I think I know the answer, but
yeah, I probably Freshdesk.
yeah, that's what
it does take a little work, but I would turn a corner and get really excited about like, what, there's this email feature, this is amazing, and and then I'd back up a few and I'd change some records just to make sure I could make use that email situation work. It's, again, it's going to take a little bit, but if I ran into an issue, I would go right to their help articles and knowledge base and have an answer really quickly. So yeah, it did not take long to get that set up. Once I kind of got oriented to what everything was, and they have some videos too, I think. So yeah, I think Freshdesk is, I really got excited about it, quite honestly.
I can attest
really,
to that.
Really neat. Yeah.
I was texting Ashley behind the scenes, like, this feels like it has a lot of potential, like, and again, with the Googling animal shelter software, that's never one that would have crossed my mind first. Like, I know a ton about it, but it's never one that would have crossed my mind to kind of be using it for something like this.
Yeah. I think one thing to keep in mind also is, you realize your own field is not unlimited in terms of size. So if you think about the potential for someone developing a low-cost software tool that has a limited market, there probably aren't going to be that many options. So by expanding your view to something that could be used across multiple industries or sectors, potentially allows you to tap into a much bigger market, and you might be more able to offer something at a lower price point because you're going to have volume. So that's definitely one reason to consider, expanding your scope of vision. And the bigger the company, also potentially the more support they're able to offer. A small company,
very true.
Yeah,
limited resources.
Definitely.
Well, super. I think we're like 6 minutes away from hitting our hour. So I think we'll stop it there for today. And I'm really going to encourage anybody who hasn't yet signed up for the volunteer and donor management session on Friday, because again, that's like a whole new set of options. So yeah, you can go ahead and sign up at Eventbrite again. And this session is recorded and will be posted. We will also be posting the PowerPoint slides, so you can go back through that for your notes and look at the contact information for any of these organizations. And then we also have posted on the website on Friday will be the Airtable with the overview cards of kind of, I don't want to say ranking, but of how the different softwares are able to accommodate the different options and tracking options. I'll be live on the website at the end of the week.
Okay.
Cool.
Great.
Have a good afternoon, everybody, and we'll see you all on Friday.
Thank you.
Take care.
See you then.